also operate to dissipate the system, because with the time bank, you're actually not using the circulation of money. You're using simply the barter of services. And that's a very interesting, effective thing that kind of hits two birds with one stone. As everyone knows, we don't advocate collapse, but we see it coming, and on one way or another, it's going to have a tipping point, and everyone's going to have to figure out what side they want to be on, to preserve the current system or to really work to get a new system in place as fast as possible. So, other organizations, there are many of them out there that I've been in contact with over the years that identify with us on a certain level, but they're not necessarily willing to go the full length. I've had great conversations with John McMurtry, who actually agrees that a moneyless society is a very, very interesting prospect and possible. But he says, we have to start to do some reform, though, and in the meantime, because of the goal is so distant, it's going to take reform processes, which I agree with. And I've always thought kind of silently while I was adhering to the sort of all-or-nothing issue of the Venus Project. So those inhibitions are now gone. Working on multiple levels is very important, from engaging the community, providing resources, fund drives, closed drives, to also beginning to engage other institutions that have done great work in sustainable agriculture, open source technology. There's all sorts of wonderful institutions out there that are not necessarily looking for the social system we are, but they have the components there. And it's time for us to bring all of this together. I'm tired of the separation. It really pains me to see what is nothing more than a temper tantrum of ego coming from the Venus Project, so they can override and just make sure their name and their, quote, legacy, their ideas, promulgating everything and having it all come back to them, because evidently they have the mystery information that no one else does, and you can't possibly operate without the Venus Project if you want to reference a resource-based economy. And as I stated in other forum posts, and by the way, I apologize for this slight tangent, I've listened to Jacques for tens and tens of hours, have so many hours of recordings, and I go through it, and I have gone through it many times in notebooks and notebooks, and if there's some mystery attribute that I haven't been told when really I hear him repeat himself constantly, I'm perplexed, I'm confused. And frankly, there isn't some mystery. There isn't some infamous schematic that is hidden away that has the secrets to a resource-based economy. I even question whether they have any blueprints at all when it comes to the actual technicals, because of all the times I've asked about specifics. Granted, brilliant ideas of invention, many different ideas that are in isolation that regard efficiency, but the train of thought doesn't change, and it doesn't take just the mind of Jacques or anyone to move this forward. I am going to start a nonprofit. I haven't developed a name for this yet, but it's to be a nonprofit based on a very isolated attribute of our work with the Zeitgeist Movement. Let me restate, the Zeitgeist Movement is about world unification towards a common goal, a resource-based economy, a ground-up approach to technically satisfying the needs of the human population, and all of the science that goes around with this that has developed throughout the years that basically create our scientific reality. And this is no invention of anybody again, by the way. This is simply a natural culmination of information and slowly inching out of all the superstitious stuff that has permeated us for so long and getting into a frame of mind that is actually progressive and based on a physical referent, on physical reality. That is the Zeitgeist Movement's overarching goal. But this other nonprofit, well, the only nonprofit, the Zeitgeist Movement is a non-entity. It's a global reference organization. I do have the trademark on it because we have all of these people out there trying to abuse and attack and infiltrate and hurt us. But my trademark ownership of that has no relationship to anything other than the fact that if someone takes our name and tries to abuse it or paint false pictures, such as what happened in Germany, where they said there was some Nazi Zeitgeist, some group that claimed to be Nazis using the Zeitgeist Movement name in this social network. These things sadly have to be protected against. And as I've stated before, the bigger we grow, which is inevitable, the bigger the attacks will come. As a brief aside, please remember what we're advocating and how difficult it is for many people to deal with it. In fact, if anyone out there doesn't understand this, you can do searches for anything derogatory related to myself or the movement, and there's a whole subculture of people that apparently are so threatened by information in the movie, so threatened by stuff that is said by myself and even the Venus Project, that they're willing to spend exorbitant amounts of time trying to create disinformation and insulting videos and blogs. And granted, it's nothing different from anything that's relatively popular. You can go into a grocery store and you have the National Enquirer. There's no difference at all. And I've addressed these issues before. It's called the circus. But it does reveal a certain fear because it's a little more vehement than what you see in the general arena. It's a subculture of people that are basically so terrified of something that they're willing to spend a substantial amount of time working to insult and inflame and create division amongst groups or anything and try to demean. And this is a staple of what we can expect because it's only going to grow and get worse as this challenge to the world continues to flourish, where we, in the advocation of an entirely new social system, what you're doing is you're challenging the identity of so many people, and they will blinker things out in very complex ways in order to make it seem like their view of reality is actually viable. So anyway, I apologize for the digression. The issue with the nonprofit that's going to be established is going to hone in specifically on the technicals. It's an extension of the From Earth to Venus project. Now, I haven't talked about that in a while because we had a lot of snags trying to get this going in programming. Originally, Jacques was going to kind of head this. That was my intention when this was first organized. And what From Earth to Venus is basically a manual reconstruction of the technicals of society. So the first thing we would do is we create a digital platform of the Earth. We could use Google API. Again, I've stated this before, so I'll reiterate it for those that haven't heard of this. The original concept was to have a website with Google API programming where we begin to document all the resources on the planet. We begin to show it in visual form through layers in this programming. And then we begin to build infrastructure using the most advanced technology. It's all a virtual type of environment, but it's based on whatever information we can find, and we construct out of that. So this new nonprofit is literally this team of designers, structural engineers, interdisciplinary by all means, which will take the reins. These are true technicians. These aren't just free thinkers like myself. These are people that work in these areas, technically specific. The only component that's important is that we don't worry about the current state of affairs, at least not for this project, at least not initially. We approach it by doing a ground-up revision as though the planet had never been populated, as though there was nothing ever here before. And of course, that's the train of thought that's used in Project Earth, the third part of Zeitgeist Moving Forward, which presents the reasoning clearly for a resource-based economy. This is very, very powerful if you think about it. If we get a team of people that are really able to do this and make it presentable and truly as technically viable as possible, real scale issues. We build digital constructions, full models of, say, North America, scaled obviously, or anything, South America, the continent of Africa. We isolate resources. We show where the geothermal plants would be best suited based on what we understand, where the highest level of wind farm technology can be harnessed. And you take the entire approach of proximity, strategic design, all the things I've talked about. For example, the TEDx talk goes through a different train of thought that I thought was very important: strategic design, strategic allocation, dynamic equilibrium. There's other components such as proximity. All of these logical attributes of what it means to make a sustainable and conservative true economy could manifest itself through this new institution, which again is the Zeitgeist movement, but it's more isolated. It's only about the technicals. That's it. It's not about the sociological. It's not about how to construct prisons and deal with crime. This is a ground-up approach from a technical standpoint, just to show the world, which is on the verge of crisis, both ecologically and economically, yet that yes, we do have the ability to do this, and the efficiency generated would be absolutely incredible. And this is what we show to the world. Through time, these technicians, these scientists, these engineers, these designers will recreate the entire planet in a presentable form, probably continent by continent. And then meetings, conferences will exist that actually show leaders the full technical outlay, that show institutions, even corporations, whatever. Show the community what's possible, and the big hope, in tandem with the social movement globally, critical mass global, sharing these ideas, is to get people to say,